And I think it is perhaps, 28th, 29th, 30th card in the deck, something that can be cut and swapped out for something else. But it does seem to do a good job when the time comes.
I definitely agree with you on that one. And so we're going to be getting underway here shortly with Casie versus Faeli. And when I said shortly, I wasn't kidding. We got a Dragon Priest mirror match that's coming up. Casey's going to be on, the one going first here. To me, Twilight Drake seems like one of the biggest hitters in this matchup. We saw some pretty brilliant play throughout the tournament. And, specifically with you and I casting, one of the big ones I think about is Hunter Ace in that first match. I think he had a brilliant performance on Dragon Priest. And I'm kind of curious to see if other players, how they approach the matchup. I think that my mind has been changed a lot on when to use Northshire Cleric in a matchup like this, or just in general by watching some of the top pros play this weekend. For me, though, it really feels like Twilight Drake is such a key card. You think about Alexstrasza, you think about Shadow Reaper, Anduin, but that one single card changes a lot of how you use tools like, for instance, Twilight Acolyte and Faeli's hand early on.
So you mentioned briefly there you had perceptions changed on usage of Northshire Cleric. Like how did that perception change take place? What's the difference?
Honestly, for me, most of my Priest games, albeit it's not too terribly many of them since the Raza Anduin change, I just pretty much play this card on turn one. Mm-hmm. And after watching players play it, specifically in this matchup, Hunter Ace held it all the way until he could play Wild Pyromancer, play Northshire Cleric, and Divine Spirit with it. And even more specifically, he waited till his opponent had a Northshire Cleric on board so that he could both draw through his deck and attempt to burn cards from the opposing deck.
Ah, yes. I remember now. Wait, you said we saw some great play from Hunter Ace in that Priest game. The only thing I can remember about that Hunter Ace series is the Odd Warrior versus Benedictus Priest game. The rest of it was a blur. But now you spell out the situation.
Yeah, the other 3 hours of that match.
Yeah, his Northshire Cleric usage was very much on point in that series.
And I think Faeli holding on to it here turn one speaks a lot to that.
Yeah,
it's not as simple as just play it on turn one.
Right. Because also, when you think about the matchup, Northshire Cleric on turn one is very much like a Paladin matchup kind of thing, right? Because they don't contest it very well. Whereas you play it on turn one in this matchup, the first minion that your opponent plays is likely to be something like a Twilight Drake. So then what's your Northshire Cleric going to do? It's never going to get heal value unless you're getting Powered Shield down on it as well. Like, it's just going to bump into a Twilight Drake and die.
I don't like that. That sounds bad.
It does. That is the opposite of what you want your Northshire Cleric to do.
Yeah, you want it to draw cards.
Not draw cards.
And then die.
Or live.
Yeah, it could live too, like a Powered Shield. Mm-hmm. But then it dies. Takes a bump and then it dies after that.
This is all getting very morbid. This seems like a philosophical lesson that everything ends in death.
True.
Yeah.
That's how cycles of life work. It's a cycle.
But we could perhaps keep it a little more lighthearted for the sake of the Hearthstone broadcast.
Well, I mean, Tark Reaper's alive for now.
Good. You focus on that.
Yeah.
What do you want to drop behind it? It's got to be a Twilight Drake, right?
Well,
what's the argument against it?
If my opponent plays a Twilight Drake, what better thing to do than to match it? It's like a chess game, right? If your opponent moves a pawn, you move the same piece, and you keep doing that until your opponent immensely punishes you. You mirror the same moves, right?
I'm sure that's how you play chess.
That's a true story. It's definitely not.
Okay.
Ooh.
There's the boy. As we mentioned. Powered Shield first, just for good sequencing.
Casie, by the way, plays blistering.
Do you know what?
Fast.
I was literally about to say I'm going to try and get through this whole series without mentioning how fast Casie plays.
Oh, well, that's one of the first things I always want to mention because it's such a stark contrast from most of the other professionals you see.
Yes.
Casie has talked at length about how when he takes his time and plays too slow, he feels like it's almost distracting to him.
Yeah. It's actually one of the first moments I bonded with Casie. That championship appearance that you mentioned in the intro, he played lightning fast, and it was really most people's first exposure to Casie as a player. And a lot of the other commentators and the viewers as well were saying, "Why is he playing so fast? Like obviously everything that goes wrong must be him playing too fast. No one else plays this fast, therefore this is wrong." And I was just kind of pointed out well, maybe this is just his comfort zone, right? People have a rhythm. The most important thing while playing in stressful situations is to replicate what feels normal to you. So if this is what's normal to Casie, don't slow down because that's just going to make you uncomfortable in the situation.
I feel like we've seen it time again on stage too. It's players getting ahead of themselves. They start thinking too much. They get outside of their comfort zone, and then they make a big error.
Exactly.
I feel like we could have summed up the speed of play by going, well, he is a Miracle Rogue player.
Also that, yes. I'm sure there is a pragmatic reason for his APM, and that comes from Gadgets and Auctioneer turns.
doesn't give you much time.
I like this from Casie. It's although he's using Dustbreaker, he also used his Twilight Drake to trade just to get some value out of it, and then you saw him even stop for a second to consider healing it because early game Twilight Acolytes often signal an intention to then Cabal Shadow Priest that same minion on a following turn.
Yeah.
So Casie trading with his Twilight Drake firstly lowers the health, lowers the overall value of that minion, and then you saw what for Casie was deep consideration about whether to heal the Twilight Drake. That's about 1.5 seconds that it took.
Well, I'm feeling for Faeli. This turn is looking awfully good. I'm seeing a Wild Pyromancer, I'm seeing a Coin, I'm seeing a Divine Spirit. And I'm seeing 3 extra cards in hand.
Divine Hymn.
Divine Hymn. Why do I always call this Divine Spirit?
Yeah, you have Blade Flurry, Reckless Flurry confusion, and Divine Hymn, Divine Spirit confusion.
To me, the Flurry one makes sense. You know, they both blow up a lot of one number to deal damage to your opponent's board equal to that number.
Yes.
Divine Spirit, Divine Hymn, not really.
Not that similar.
Not the same ballpark.
No. But yeah, it's a big turn from Faeli, but this Cleric's out here living. This is the exact kind of situation we saw before with Hunter Ace, where Hunter Ace responded to this exact spot with the Cleric turn of his own and then burned some cards away from the opponent. But Casie, without that luxury available to him, just says, you know what? That Cleric belongs to me now.
The Wild Pyromancer, you know, to me, the more dangerous of the two by far.
Yeah, I can see it.
As we've come to that screeching halt in the game where neither player managed to take the early game. And this is where that tempo battle, I think, starts to really matter, though. You know, the ability to play the first Alexstrasza and actually follow up in the face of adversity is such a big deal in this matchup. The difference in being able to play an Alexstrasza and get Shadow Reaper Anduin and not be able to do that is night and day.
Ooh. Pushing some damage. Value trades with Scale Worm.
I am a bit interested in that. Could have left Casie with no minion on board and just have a 4/3 and a Northshire Cleric yourself.
Yep.
Let the pain speak to me.
Probably just looking to force some chip damage through. It is huge in this matchup if you can build up minion pressure because, you know, the Alexstrasza into Anduin into, or sorry, the Anduin into Alexstrasza into immediately kill you with a couple of Mind Blast plan doesn't work very consistently against the Divine Hymn deck, the Holy Fire deck, and of course just natural hero power healing. So forcing through some chip damage with minions so that you can keep more consistent pressure on your opponent to back up with Mind Blasts does often work out in the matchup, but at the cost of leaving minions in play for your opponent.
There's a time and a place for it. I think this spot for Faeli still looks okay. I don't think Casie took immense advantage of this. Ooh, this Tar Creeper is making things a lot more difficult.
Real icky.
Blech. It's the Tar Creeper sound.
Oh, I thought you were just doing like onomatopoeic icky.
Let me change your mind.
I am known for that. Faeli, interesting.
One of my core personality traits.
Faeli very interested in just getting a lot of stuff on board.
Yeah.
That prevents a clean Primordial Drake from just coming down and just leaving your minion there, I guess.
Sure.
You'd have a 4/1 here and just be able to kind of sit there with it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's actually a really important trade I think Faeli made is to prevent Casie from just leaving a 4/1 hanging there.
Yeah. It's interesting because it's hard to read into, but it feels like Casie has been very liberal with giving card draw to his opponent. By which I mean, like in a Priest Mirror in particular, card draw effects, it just so happens like whatever iteration of Priest exists throughout the ages, card draw effects when you play a Priest Mirror kind of work both ways. Whether you're playing Loot Hoarders, whether you're playing Acolyte of Pains, they can always be Cabal Shadow Priested, they can always be Shadow Madness, and all of these things can punish you and have your opponent draw cards instead. Same thing with Nausea Cleric. It's a double-edged sword in terms of who engineers who drawing each other cards. If you look at the card counts here, 16 remaining for Casie and 10 for Faeli, and he's been doing things like just, you know, Cabal Shadow Priesting a Cleric when it was immediately going to die afterwards, dropping an Acolyte raw on the board where it could just be Cabal Shadow Priested for full value, Primordial Drake and Acolyte of Pain to give extra card draw. He doesn't seem overly concerned with the card draw race in the matchup.
Which I'm quite interested in. Is fatigue like a real thing in the matchup?
I've seen it happen, but I wouldn't be prepared to call it a real thing. There's stuff you can do, like if you want to set out for fatigue, you can kind of decide to take Holy Fires and Divine Hymns off your Shadow Visions, and generally your opponent will default to the position of trying to push damage against you, and then you can kind of, like, each Mind Blast they pick, you kind of offset with a Divine Hymn, right?
Yeah.
So it can be done, and I've seen it happen, but it's kind of a weird niche scenario that plays out rather than a game plan I see people play towards. The other thing to consider is that Casie has kind of just had his Anduin and Alex chilling for a while already, so he might just be feeling like, what's my rush to draw cards at this point? I'm kind of happy with the makeup of my hand right now.
Yeah, you know, step 2 to that, though, is you know, maintaining control of the board. And the Alexstrasza here, you know, good on Faeli to have the patience last turn, not Twilight Acolyte and Cabal Shadow Priest away this Primordial Drake. Now he gets to take away the pressure that an Alexstrasza would otherwise apply to him. If Casie wants to answer this with Shadow Reaper Anduin, he's just going to take a lot of minion damage.
Yeah. This is maybe not a big yikes, but a pretty medium yikes for Casie right now.
I'm gonna say big yikes.
Okay.
6 damage is, I mean, that's a heap when it comes to like priest minions. Like, I take 4 from a priest minion, I'm like, oh geez. But I guess the pressure here does mean a lot against Faeli as well, where you see Casie do something like this, and it's full panic mode where your life total is concerned. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get blown up.
Yep.
You can't just apply more minion pressure. You have to figure out a way to take care of your life total.
Exactly. And crucially, Casie can already deal 14 next turn. If he casts that Shadow Visions, gets another Mind Blast off it, then that's 2 Mind Blasts, 2 pings, possible with his 8 remaining mana.
And in terms of spells left in the deck, we saw the Divine Hymn already used. He's only got 1 copy of that. There's still a Mind Blast left in the deck, a Shadow Visions, 2 copies of Psychic Scream. Does he have a Power Word Shield left? Should have been tracking that.
I believe so. I believe so.
So that would mean a 75% chance to snag a Mind Blast in that situation. So Faeli has to take this Divine Hymn.
Well, all he would have to do is heal his own face to get out of range of what Casie has. But Faeli is well within his rights to expect Casie to be able to deal 16 here.
And just also you have to count for the turns after that as well. Yes. I mean, I don't think Faeli's near being able to blast Casie out of this game yet.
Right. And there it is.
And now Casie under the threat of this return pressure. The backup lane here looks like the Shadow Visions Psychic Scream.
Very possible, yeah. Crucially, we saw Faeli's options there off his Shadow Visions was just Mind Blast and Divine Hymn. So even if Casie were to go for a 2-turn setup here with the Holy Fire, then Faeli can just go straight back into this second Shadow Visions and guarantee picking up a second Divine Hymn.
And have a Holy Fire to back that up as well.
Yeah.
Casie not offered a Mind Blast from this. So
the other Shadow Visions we didn't consider as well.
I did not consider that, I don't think. 1, 2, 3, 4. I did, because I said 75% chance.
Okay.
Yeah. I just didn't verbalize it. But that's an important notion. Back in the deck they go. You know, it's usually turns like this where you're totally okay with just ripping another Alexstrasza. Like 7 damage and an 8/8, sign me up.
Yeah.
I wonder.
But is there something better?
I bring life.
Faeli says no. Casie seems unhappy with the scenario.
Whoa.
I was going to say, I don't see Primordial Drake winning. I think this has to be that kind of freeze mage setup that I was talking about yesterday that you have
The bootleg ice block.
Bathed me in ridicule for where you just use that Holy Fire to deal some damage and get out of range of dying immediately on the following turn. It's exactly what he does. He doesn't die to just double Mind Blast from hand now with this Alex in play. He gives himself a shot, at least, of ripping the Mind Blast off the top on the following turn.
But I'm looking at a bootleg ice block in Faeli's hand.
Yep.
And I'll tell you, the only thing that beats a bootleg ice block is another bootleg ice block. How did you come up with the term bootleg ice block?
Do you actually want to hear the train of thought?
I do, but at the same time, I just see what you mean.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it's doing. It's like, hope I don't die this turn.
Right. So you get to stages with this deck where you're playing very freeze mage-like strategies, where it's like, I'm going to throw some burn at your face this turn, I'm going to do the same thing next turn, you can't kill me in between, therefore I win. And Holy Fire is the best card in your deck at doing that.
It just sounds like an old Goblins versus Gnomes card where if you would die this turn, instead don't.
Yeah.
Parentheses, sometimes.
GVG was a different time.
Casie does not look happy with that.
Nope.
And rightfully so. That's a lot of the hopes sailing out the window.
Yeah, I believe that is actually just a lockout from this position. I'm not sure I see the scenario where he comes back into this one. He just needs too many things. He needs a way to deal with an 8/8. He needs a way to deal out of range, heal out of range of this Mind Blast combination. It's just too much work. It's too much work to do in the couple of turns maximum that he has.
So he hopes there's no Mind Blast on Faeli's side. We see it's there, and that's going to be game one.
Yep.
Over to Faeli. I feel like given the hands, there was so many different lines to take in this one that it's just really hard to say, for me anyway, what is right and what is wrong. I mean, a lot of this looked fairly straightforward to me. I'm a little bit surprised at how aggressive Casie played, but that's how he got to this point, is aggressive play.
Absolutely. I think his speed of play is actually backed up by stylistic choices that he makes as well. He really does like to overwhelm the opponent, and that's a combination of how you play on the board, but also the speed can often get on top of an opponent. If you're up against an opponent that plays fast, you can often feel pressured to make bad decisions, and that's really one of the facets of Casey's game that he tries to leverage against people. But Faeli there was able to resist, and as well as the aggression you're talking about, I'm really curious in just how liberal he was with allowing his opponent to draw cards in that matchup as well. It really did seem to come back to bite him a little bit in the end, because every time he went for a push, the answer was there. Well, why was the answer there? Because Faeli was able to draw so many cards through his deck.
Definitely a good point to make. We're going to have to go to a quick break. When we come back, though, we're going to be jumping into game 2 of the series. The winner moves on, and the loser is going to move down to a decider match. So don't go anywhere. We are finding out who our top 4 competitors are at this event here today.
What a great match! But what hope does the princess have of winning? All of the hopes. She's looking for an answer, looking for a way to stay alive. What a play! She's still dead, though. Remember, once this is over, we have our raffle drawing. Get your tickets ready.
Valera! Valera!
You cannot escape the shadow of death.
But hold on, we still have another turn to go. Nope! That means it's time for the raffle! The winning number is 8353! That's incredible! And it looks like we have a winner! Head down to the field for your prize, you lucky guy, you! And the prize is... If our lucky contestant defeats the Loa of Death, Everyone here gets a prize! If not, he loses his soul. Good luck! Oh no! That's against the rules! There are rules? So, lucky contestant actually won. That means everyone wins too! Packs for everyone! You get packed, and you get packed.
My hand is too full.
And you get packed. And you get packed. Everyone gets packed.
Welcome back, everybody. Faeli leads 1-0 in this winner's match here at the Hearthstone Championship Tour European Playoffs. Casie, just down one game. It's not the worst in the world. I've been down way more games than that.
What's the most games you've ever been down?
I think 6.
With honor.
What does that even mean?
Oh, 2.
Okay. Even Paladin coming out from Faeli. Casie just going back to the well on this Dragon Priest.
Saw this matchup a bit earlier with Faeli taking on Bunny Hopper. The roles were reversed, I believe, in that one. Even Paladin, in my opinion, really struggles with Dragon Priest.
Okay.
Like, way bad. No, like a lot worse than that.
I'm trying to imagine, but you keep upping the scale, and my brain is going to terrifying places that I would like to leave immediately.
I'm already terrified.
Okay.
Casey's got Coin, he's got Wild Pyromancer, he's got Power Word Shield, he's got Acolyte of Pain. So, Northshire Cleric was the card that was filling that card draw role for Bunny Hopper in that first series. But it's really about that Wild Pyromancer Power Word Shield to me. That is just such a devastating effect against Even Paladin.
Yeah. Can definitely see it. It does take a while for them to get rolling. The interim period is pretty much just filled with a bunch of 1-1s a lot of the time. So if that Pyromancer can come down uncontested and take the board, it's really hard to mess with after that point.
Think about how much Even Paladin relies on Divine Shield and the 1-1s to land buffs.
Yeah.
Your minions are already, fairly small in size to begin with, so as they get chipped away, they're, they threaten to trade rather than threaten to just simply kill a minion and stay alive.
We see the... Okay, this is interesting. We saw this same scenario in the previous series where you mentioned the roles were reversed. Bunny Hopper was the one playing Paladin, I believe. Wait, no? There was a game where Bunny Hopper played Paladin against Faeli where he had the option to hero power on turn 2 or play a 2-drop on turn 2.
Yeah.
And you discussed, the idea of you floating 1 mana now by hero powering or floating 2 mana next turn where you have very little to do. Faeli went the opposite direction here. What's the reason for him doing that?
I think a lot of it is just the fact that it's a priest versus instead of a paladin.
Okay.
Bunny Hopper was facing off in a paladin mirror match.
Okay.
So, filling up that gap with the right card is super important. Where here, I think Faeli, damage, I think, needs to be a priority. Casey's not going to be able to fight on board optimally the entire game, at least, that's the ideal scenario. You fall into a situation like this, though, I'm telling you, Coin, Power Word Shield, Pyromancer does a number to Even Paladin. It's like, it feels like Faeli is just so far behind now. You're going to have to True Silver instead of play the minion you want to play. That means Casie gets to play a big Twilight Drake.
Yep.
And that means the rest of your minions are going to have a tough time sticking to board.
Sure does. It also means you're going to have a tough decision next turn because there is a very high chance that it's going to be Cleric Heal coming out here from Casie, which means that True Silver has a real tough decision to make.
I love the Northshire just before it's even his turn on the spectator client.
Yep.
It's in play.
Yep.
Casey's already drawn the card. Casey's actually already on turn 5. We just can't see it quite yet.
Yeah.
This is a big threat here, though. If, Faeli managed to pick up Blessing of Kings there. A much bigger difference in the way the board looks than if he just simply has to true silver.
Absolutely.
And now, when I look at this board, I'm thinking that the Northshire Cleric's a bit more threatening than the Wild Pyromancer is in this circumstance. So I think the card draw is definitely a threat. However, if you let Casie draw a card, that means Twilight Drake's not coming down. But if you let him draw a card, that probably means Twilight Drake wasn't in his hand.
Whoa. Ripping the equality here instead, which does solve the problem, because now he gets to trade with the Pyromancer, and the Northshire Cleric is contested as a 1-1 and cannot get heal value on the following turn.
I think this is quite brilliant from Faeli. I think that, you know, kind of mixing the two and figuring out a different way to solve the problem.
I just love it. That was kind of a weird thing that happened. And Casie just processed all the information he needed to immediately. His turn took 3 seconds.
I imagine he's been in that circumstance before.
Yeah. I mean,
Casie plays a lot. When you play this fast, you get in twice as many games. That's why he's so good.
To be fair, his turn was Twilight Drake on 4.
Yeah.
It's understandable.
It's just a weird thing to see. You know, I imagine it just fits in the puzzle pieces as it goes along.
Saranite Chain Gang, one of the inclusions in Faeli's deck that we haven't necessarily been seeing from all the even Paladins throughout the tournament so far.
Take a look at Casey's road and how he got to this point. Started out with a round 1 win over Viper. Player who is already through to his 2nd championship of the year.
Yep. And then 6 hours later, he played his round 2 versus Silvos.
Wasn't Casey's fault, though.
Again, a real tough road as we get towards the end there. Viper again in, switching to Vayner now, also playing Viper. This is Huttle, A8, 3650, Renmen, Davido, Saiho, Dell. This is what we pointed out before. Every member on that list, every match he's played these last 2 days have been in a top 8 of a playoffs or better. Many of them are championship competitors.
Yeah, the last 4 rounds of Swiss that Faeli played, all 4 of those players made the top 8.
Yep.
He might have had the toughest road to get to this point so far, but that road's not over yet. Feels like it's hit quite a roadblock this game, though.
Equality number 2. And this time there is a reaction from Casie. So the common denominator I can see there is that both of Faeli's qualities have been used to deny card draw away from Casie.
Yeah, something you know, to really think about as well is that gives Casie a lot of information about where he wants to go with this game now. Now he knows his Primordial Drakes aren't under threat of Equality Avenging Wrath. He knows that the turn he plays Alex Strauss, he's not going to get blown out because of that burst damage that Equality Avenging Wrath can provide. You know, that's really, to me, the big 1-2 punch that solidifies so much here is that Equality Avenging Wrath is now off the menu where burst damage is concerned.
That is a very, very huge impact on the matchup as well, because that is really, I mean, it's weird to call it a burst combo because it's still not really that much damage even if it goes off, but it is how you die against even Paladin a lot of the time.
Yeah. I mean, the deck deals a lot of damage with minions.
Exactly. Yeah. You just back that up with Equality Avenging Wrath, which doubles up on A, clearing taunts out of the way, and B, just pushing a little bit more damage on top of that as well, and it's quite often enough to get the job done.
This deck does a lot to achieve Fireball. And I don't mind.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, just kind of a shake of the head there. This is not the scenario you envisioned happening 7 turns into this game.
And yeah, from this point, Casie has Twilight Acolyte Cabal combo twice. If he uses one of these Cabals to combo with the Twilight Acolyte he's already used, he has Shadow Reaper Anduin to take care of a Lich King or a Tyrion or anything that comes down like that. He has Psychic Scream if the board gets out of control wide. He has Duskbreaker if it gets out of control wide, but the minions aren't big enough.
This is the reason I think that this deck was so strong in this tournament, is that even Paladin is a force in this metagame. And when you have to go up against this deck in particular, it's just a tough game to win.
You see the same thing I spoke about in the previous game as well. Faeli recognizes what's up, and he uses his Divine Shield to protect the value on his Corpse Taker, not on the Gen Greymane, which is, you know, a 7-statted minion compared to a 6-statted minion on the Corpse Taker, but he knows that the 2/5 was under threat of being stolen by a follow-up Cabal Shadow Priest.
Yeah.
Guess what?
Let me change
Rewarded.
your mind.
Something to note, though, Casie no Dragon in hand for Duskbreaker.
Casie I've spent at least the last 20 minutes saying that you can afford to play this fast because it doesn't lead to mistakes. You can't be doing things like that.
That is just, you know, that's just a mistake.
Yep.
Or is this the sickest bait ever? He's baiting the Gen Greymane to get traded off here. Future healing, buy 2 extra health.
Oh yeah, he's got board space issues. That's what it is right now.
It's the bait. They're looking at it and they're going, ooh, this consecration is juicy with the True Silver Champion. Though in truth,
It kind of
is, yeah.
Let me think.
I imagine Faeli has some pretty big interest in getting the Wind Fury Harpy down this turn. Now, Casie got information that that was there earlier on in the game when Corpse Taker didn't have it.
Yes, he did.
Must move quickly.
And guess what? Now it belongs to him.
Reporting for duty.
I don't think there's enough other threat on the board to really pull him away from doing that. Dustbreaker in hand, activating everything. Alex Straza now joins the party for double activators.
Well, now the other thing to me is that Dustbreaker's active as well.
Yep.
So even after this board state gets handled, there's more to take care of it. And I'm actually not certain that Casie has interest in taking away this Wind Fury Harpy. You know, I would definitely think that Lich King or Tyrion has a much bigger target on his forehead to Twilight Acolyte away, but this is a giant board swing where you're looking at 10 attack added to Casey's board. 2 of it is Wind Fury.
So I think this is fine, and I'll explain to you why. If there were a Lich King or Tyrion by now, we're on turn 10. A Lich King or Tyrion would have been played. So Casey's saying, well, if he draws one of those, which he might, I have a Shadow Reaper Anduin, I blow it up. If he draws 2 of those, that's insanely lucky for him and is very rare to happen. But in that scenario, I probably still win the game with the quality of my hand. After I kill the first one, I could probably survive the second one.
Yeah.
So this is really just the last target that he needs to deal with in his mind between now and winning the game.
Yeah, that's a really true story. I mean, your opponent drawing back-to-back those 2 is going to be extremely rare. And then you want to get the Shadow Reaper Anduin down before you Alex Straza anyway.
Yep.
Makes sense to me.
Double Consecration coming out from Faeli, but he's having to play defense, and his hand is basically exhausted of value at this point. And he's still not going to be successfully taking the board here.
I believe Faeli is, you know, sometimes free to push here. I think the Divine Speed, Divine Hymn is really the only thing that allows the Wind Fury Harpy to keep attacking.
Yeah. No Alex. Interesting. I would have thought Alex would have been worth a shot that turn. I guess with the Corpse Taker on board.
Power Word Shield.
Power Word Shield.
That enables it.
Yeah, I guess dealing with the Corpse Taker first is pretty reasonable.
This is so smart.
How did he process all that?
This is so smart.
But
This is exactly the situation you want to be in before you Alex.
But
this would have taken me the entirety of the turn.
That's what I'm saying.
And I'm pretty sure I would have landed on Alex Straza.
He immediately Shadow Visioned. He immediately took the Power Word Shield. He immediately knew that then after Divine Spiriting and healing it up, he could then Dustbreaker and keep his guy alive and push. Like,
yeah, I mean, the bulk of the work has already been done for Casie. He's dismantled the board position, Faeli's out of resources, and there's not really anything left to give. You know, the last few cards are, you know, piddly little minions.
right.
Reporting for duty.
Let's call it a day.
All right, can we giddy up now?
Reporting for duty.
I kind of want to giddy up.
The value trade here is... Come on.
Yeah.
Damage.
Who said always value trade?
The victory is yours.
See what going face
Well,
does?
yeah, what I just saw is he went face and the other guy conceded. That's my experience.
Priest, that's a pretty clean matchup for it. I feel like we've seen 2 pretty standard games in a row so far. We got a tied ball game, 1 game apiece. We're gonna have to move him from there, but I'll tell you what, if you've been struggling to even Paladin, get yourself a good old Dragon Priest deck and go blow everything they have up.
Yeah.
It's easy.
It seems like it. If you draw Cleric, Pyro, Power, Shield, or 2 of those 3 cards in combination, then yeah, it seems like it's pretty straightforward from that position.
You're going to have a tough time figuring out some of the nuances of it, but you'll get the hang of it. That deck is very strong versus even Paladin. And one of the reasons that I've loved it just this tournament, it also performs pretty well, I think, versus the Hybrid Hunter variants that we've been seeing, that pack Spellstones as their major push potential towards that turn 5 range. Duskbreaker does a lot of work to your opponent when they're busy playing a bunch of secrets and then making a bunch of 3/3s all at once.
So I have a question for you. Nathan, O Lord of Evenlock Zamora. There is an Evenlock in this lineup for Casie. We have 2 decks remaining for Faeli. They are Secret Hunter and Even Paladin. How's it looking?
I'm going to answer that question, but we got to go to break first. So when we come back, I'm going to answer Saddle's question, and we're getting right into Game 3. We're in a winner's match, so don't go anywhere.
Tickets sold out days ago. Oh, that's too bad. If only there was someone around with tickets to sell, I'm sure they would be willing to make a deal. For gold. At triple the face value.
I will pay for that.
Justice. Raffle tickets! Get your raffle tickets! Everyone gets a raffle ticket. Keep it ready for halftime. We have the greatest prize anyone's ever seen. Oh. Get your For justice! For justice! For justice!
Wow.
Give that minion a turn to get ready.
Oh, where's your huffer? I'll take you on! Dragon Hawks forever! And what do you want? You want some of this too?
Let me change your mind.
Greetings. 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 Greetings.
We're back for Game 3 of this winner's match between Faeli and Casie. It's currently tied at 1 game apiece. But there's a big question mark that's looming for me in Casey's lineup, and that's the Even Warlock. And Saddle, you asked me right before we went to break, how does Even Warlock look?
Ah, I took a 50-50 that this was all going to tie together perfectly, but do carry on.
Well, I'm going to answer that when we get to the matchup. Because for now, it's Paladin.
I'll never know. I'm just going to get you baited over and over again.
It's like that to be continued thing we just watched.
Yes. Always leave them wanting more.
Yeah. But for now, it's the Hybrid Hunter of Faeli versus the Even Paladin of Casie. I'm still not quite sure what to think of this matchup.
Okay.
And one of the reasons why is because I just really don't like secrets. I actively dislike them in Hunter because they're just not very good.
I agree.
They're good enough.
Yeah, exactly. I agree in theory. You know, the 2 mana do the thing that it says on each individual card. All terrible cards. But 2 mana do the thing it says on the cards, plus buff your Spellstone, plus do it again for free later when you cast Zul'jin, or like all that kind of. Now we're getting into business.
I'm listening.
Yeah.
Well, this is the face of terror for many paladins around the world. It's turn 1 Dire Maul. Casey's going to contest this aggressively.
Sorry, just to recap, did you just call Dire Maul the face of terror?
To paladins around the world, yeah.
Okay.
Is it not?
I mean, I can understand people being scared of moles.
I would just be scared of that one anywhere I saw it.
Okay.
Like, just to give you a point of reference, Timberwolf is a 1/1. I don't think that you or I, or the 2 of us combined, could fight off a Timberwolf and live.
Fair point.
As far as I'm concerned, we're both half-halves at best.
Can I be 3/4?
Rounds down, though.
Oh, unlucky. So wait, by your internal logic, the Dire Maul could beat up the Timberwolf?
Well, it does. Look at, I mean,
Yeah.
that's the game. That's the point of perspective right now. The Dire Maul fights 3 Timberwolves and wins. Now, granted, not simultaneously.
I wonder.
But it fights off 3 of them.
I feel like this analogy's got away from us. We should move on. Casie has the board and is singing to himself. Faeli has gone the secret Spellstone route, but he is going to be potentially losing the board quite overwhelmingly by the point he gets to play what is only going to be a 3-wolf Spellstone at this point. So Casie might actually be able to deal with it quite comfortably and move forward.
It is an explosive trap that's down.
Yes.
But I'm going to be curious about this next turn to see if Casie has interest in attacking. You know, a lot of times the way to take advantage of a Hunter Secret Best is just simply to not attack into it. And so he knows it doesn't affect minions at the moment.
Do you have to value trade a 1/1 with this buff?
I don't really have a problem with that. I think that's totally reasonable.
I think it's correct, but it still makes me deeply upset.
Whoa. You're trading the Wild Pyromancer.
Okay, I guess we're passing then. Like, it's not much of a trap, is it? It's pretty clear what just happened.
Yeah. It's not so much a trap as like as a big red button that says don't push this right now.
Yeah.
Casie is extremely aware of this explosive trap, but seems to be okay with that.
I am amazed. Because now you give your opponent coin Spellstone, and you're kind of sad about it, right? Weren't you in a much better position to deal with Spellstone if you left your minions there and didn't attack?
I am quite intrigued by that. I feel like doing nothing is way stronger in that spot. Corpse Taker and Say Go,
yeah,
I feel like is
playing
way
the
better.
Corpse Taker. Yes, I am totally with you, but the attack seems bizarre to me.
That's Blessing of Kings, though.
Never mind.
I mean, it's very possible Casie was thinking about this draw in particular, or True Silver Champion, or you know, another Arch Protector. There is a lot to be said about playing to just a strong draw that you have.
That flanking strike is a big pickup, though.
It definitely is. I'm quite worried for Casie.
Because there is a single copy of Hunter's Mark in Faeli's deck, is that correct?
That's right.
So Casie, I think, quite right to disrespect the Hunter's Mark in that position, which is what he's doing by just going full face in that scenario. But now he has massively lost this board state.
And not only that, it's gonna, you know, pretty much continue to be massively lost. But Casey's just pushing.
Yeah. So the line from here for Casie was, as soon as he draws, like, again, this is just the way Casie works. As soon as he draws the Blessing of Kings, he knows this line mapped out in entirety, which is Blessing of Kings, smash face twice, play Valinir, hit face with it twice, then on turn 7, Hero Power Spike Rouge Steed keeps me alive, turn 8, Equality Avenging Wrath, ends the game.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
Is second Spellstone and double kill command something he's accounted for?
No.
It seems like it's tough to account for.
Mm-hmm. Because again, the amount of individual bodies that are on the board when you go for your Equality Avenging Wrath push, you know, if you've got 7 bodies on the board, you're only taking 1 damage to face a lot of the time.
Whoa. Job done. Faeli's just going to push Casie down to 11 here. This is going to be the Spike Ridge Steed, of course.
Yep.
Reporting for duty.
Casie swings again.
I mean, can't be comfortable in this situation.
Nope. And now Faeli has to completely remove this board state, the 3-7 and the 2-6 that's inside, to have a reasonable chance of staying alive. Even then, there are small, tiny percentages that he can still die.
Crackling Razor Maw?
And
You would Razor Maw sometimes first in this position, I believe. Nope, it'd be 1 damage off.
Yeah, I was also just silent because I was counting various lethals with poison, kill command using to go through. You could use kill command to go perfectly through it instead of wasting 1 damage. No, it's not any better. Misses. Misses on plus attack and poison.
Living Spores, though, pads a bit against the Avenging Wrath.
True. Well, it doesn't resolve until after it completes, though, right?
I imagine he's trading the Spring Paw this turn.
Yeah, sure.
Perhaps not. No, that would not be a trade on Spring Paw in that case.
Oof.
Interesting. Wow. Just Avenging Wrath by itself. It doesn't need the equality of the stage. So Faeli's got 2 in play. The 2 from the hero power needs 4 damage, but that just basically doesn't exist in the deck.
And he's dead.
Yeah, I can't live through this.
What a roller coaster of a game.
Wow.
Just like that, Casie, a very weird looking play, I will call it, to hit the explosive trap. To consolidate a Corpse Taker on board, which was free to attack as it liked because all of the secrets were dealt with, and then rewarded, I guess you would say, although I still have many questions about the play to begin with, rewarded by a Blessing of Kings off the top. But the impressive thing from there is just how quickly he recognizes that it's face, 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 face from that point onwards.
I do agree with the face onwards. Once you draw the Blessing of Kings on the Corpse Taker, that's the magic combo that you're looking for with even Paladin every single time. I still think the attack is quite quick there. I mean, you're threatening with just the Corpse Taker to completely dismantle a Spellstone of 3 Wolves just with what you have on board, and you leave yourself a 3/3, and you get to have 5 to 6 mana of development the turn after.
And again, for context, your opponent, who is the one who knows what the secret is, suicide traded a Huffer into the 1 minion that did not die on board to an explosive trap on the previous turn. That is a galaxy brain bait, if it is a bait.
I'm trying to figure out how it could possibly be a bait. Again, I was like, this is just like the big red button that says, don't push this.
Yeah, right.
I guess to be fair, almost everyone I've asked that question to is like, well, I pushed the button. And I'm like, why? It says don't push it. Like when I asked Brian Kibler, we were at an event and we were at dinner and I asked him about this question. He goes, well, I'm pushing the button. I go, why? He goes, well, I want to know what it does. Like it says don't push it.
It's human nature, isn't it? Don't think of an elephant.
I'm not thinking of an elephant. I'm thinking of game 4 now because the question posed to me was, how does Warlock look against Faeli right now? And I'll tell you, when he has 2 chances, it looks a lot better than when he just has 1. However, I'm still quite afraid for him in this series. And the big reason why is because Hunter typically makes a big impression where Even Warlock is concerned. You know, Even Warlock spends a lot of its life total pressing that 1-cost button to draw cards. That means kill commands and steady shot reach you a lot easier than they did before.
You were saying to me during the break, though, like you felt this was the one of the 2 matchups where there were a few possible draws that panned out in favor of the even lock on average?
Yeah, one of the big ones is when Faeli fails to have significant early pressure, he's moving in on a Spellstone, and then Spellstone meets Hellfire. To me, that's the big iteration where Even Warlock comes out on top. The second one, however, is if Faeli just fails to really present any significant pressure. I think Snipe is one of the stronger secrets that you can have against this deck, but I've watched Casie play a lot of Even Warlock, and he tends to play it, in my opinion, extremely well. And one of the things he does right is that he aggressively plays minions. He doesn't just continuously life tap. He fights for board as extremely aggressively as he can, but that's the one you definitely don't want to see against Animal Companion. You're happy with Leok. You're quite happy with Misha. You are not happy with Huffer because that drastically cuts into the amount of life taps you can make.
Tale as old of time, honestly. Huffers against Warlocks. If anyone's been watching Brainad's stream since 2014, you will remember the days where he would queue Handlock, and on turn 3, his Hunter opponent would cast Animal Companion, and he would concede to Huffer on turn 3.
Well, at that point, honestly, it wasn't really that inaccurate. Like,
No.
Handlock had no way to fight. You didn't have spell stones and stuff back then. If you wanted to kill a Huffer, it was just straight up take your 7 damage and point away your Hellfire.
Just had good old-fashioned Molten Giants.
I tried that plan once. Didn't end well. Now I'm just a caster. Freezing Trap, though. Whew! That's a good one versus Even Warlock.
It is.
It's easy for Hunter to isolate board positions. But, having a bunch more Huffers in your deck, also pretty good against Even Warlock.
See that too? Ooh, the BT!
Value trade, by the way, for those of you wondering what VT stands for. I think it's quite interesting here. And I think that Faeli actually has the liberty of doing so because he's Subject 9 in Master's Call.
Okay.
You're going to need to keep pushing against Even Warlock. I think in the long term, it really favors Faeli. The short term, I think, is what favors Casie in this matchup. Cards from Casie are just, on average, more impactful.
Interesting.
I mean, that Huffer held off a heap of board position where the Subject 9 is, about as threatening as the previous Huffer was. Casie just doesn't have a strong way to really handle it.
Yep.
And he's busy trying to chip away at board.
I think to be... Oh!
Oh!
There he is. Good piggy.
This is bad news for Casie. Look at his face. He's gonna look at me, he's like, just please don't let me hear that sound. Just anything but that sound.
It's such an unpleasant sound as well. Like when you're just sat there waiting for your opponent, like Animal Companion comes up on the screen and you're just waiting for that half a second. Not only is the sound of your impending demise, it's also just jarring and unpleasant. No? Do you disagree?
I'm no comment.
Okay.
Oh, your face is just full of hatred and bitterness, and I love it.
No one wants to hear that. So game 5!
It's very much looking game 5. There's really nothing that Casie does to get out of this very much. I mean, this has been a brutal start. And so much of this was actually the trade from Faeli, which I think was quite smart. Casey's packing 2 copies of Spellbreaker, which means that more often than not, Spellbreaker's going to come down in that first Huffer. So if he uses the Dire Frenzy on turn 4, goes face, then runs right into a Spellbreaker, that's the situation where Casey's now ahead. He's created the tempo swing early on, and then gets to back it up with healing and start the race.
Right.
Faeli took that away completely.
Master's Call all the time. He's finding another Huffer here.
That's a jarring sound, by the way. The Master's Call when the horn sounds.
I quite like that one.
And cards just start flying into your opponent's hand. That's jarring.
I quite like that one.
It's game 5. Faeli, quick work in game number 4. We're looking at Even Paladin taking on Even Warlock.
And I'm pretty sure this matchup is just one of the reasons you bring Even Paladin to a tournament, right? Just to line it up against some Even Warlocks.
Yeah, I definitely am quite afraid of that matchup when I'm playing Even Warlock, and I think Corpse Taker is really one of the big reasons why. One of your strongest responses to it is if your opponent has been foolish enough to play into a Defile situation, or you happen to have a Spellbreaker and just hope that that's good enough to contest it, because the combination of of Corpse Taker plus Blessing of Kings is about the same as you just saw the Huffers will do in that situation. The difference is you draw the Huffer immediately, and it is also already in play when you have the Corpse Taker online. That Wind Fury is massive versus Even Warlock.
I think also the defensive options that Even Warlock have, like the difference between your last-ditch defensive efforts being Hooked Reavers rather than Void Lords is absurd when your opponent's clears are a quality Consecration and a quality Avenging Wrath. If you're playing a Void Lord deck, it's very difficult for Even Paladin to get consistent pressure through in the late game. But this Even Paladin does not care how big your taunts are. If they die in one shot, they die in one shot.
Yeah. A lot of times early on, I have felt that Doomsayer is such a crucial card in the matchup when I'm playing against Even Paladin.
Single copy in Casey's deck.
I'd be interested to see this from Faeli. 3/2s don't pack the same punch against Even Warlock that I feel a lot of the other minions do. A lot of times they just run into Homunculus. They run into a Plated Beetle.
They're also the 2 health point on the Defile chain, which can wreck you for that Corpse Taker thing that you were talking about.
We have turned our curse into our strength.
Sometimes you got to play the hand you're dealt.
Pair of Genjamins yet again. And we're off.
Glass Knight Blessing of Kings is, you know, another one of those 1-2 punches that really can get the job done. Again, that's the double copy of Spellbreaker.
Reporting for duty.
And one of the reasons it's there is a big nod to this matchup. Yep, 2-drop. Spend your mana. You can see why 3/2 is not the strongest.
Yes. It has suddenly become abundantly clear why a 3/2 is not what you want. Casie now quite animatedly talking to himself.
Yeah, I mean, this is, you know, Casey's not shy of showing his emotions, to say the least, but this is, you know, a bit more animated and not for the sake of suffering bad luck as I've seen him in the past.
Right. There is a rather lovely moment in one of those Rosti pieces, Gamer Sensei pieces that we're rolling in the ad breaks, where he gets in his mind kind of shafted by a top deck swipe from the opponent, and his reaction to it is priceless.
Just clap.
Yep.
Like, oh, congratulations.
Yeah. Oh, he drew the swipe.
Nice.
What a player.
Nice one there.
Yeah.
Let me think.
The pure salt that happens during competitive play to me sometimes is one of the beauties of the game.
Yep. And I think it's a fine line, and it's particularly crucial in a clutch situation like this, 2-games-to-2 championship spot on the line. I think salt is fine. You know, I think getting worked up and angry about things is not necessarily a paralytic. It can be a motivator. It's that line between being salty and angry and being on tilt. You still have to be in control of your emotions. You have to know how to channel them. You can't just let them overtake your decision process.
That's right. And a really important turn coming up here for Casie as well. I mentioned that Doomsayer, and I think it is looking quite critical to the game plan here. Even Warlock is about creating swing turns, and this is one of them.
The end is coming!
And you can see Faeli's face. He winces when he sees the Doomsayer, and rightfully so. How about nothing? Go ahead.
Yep.
Good equality. And attack it with a True Silver Champion.
And then
play an Acidic Swamp Ooze and make a token.
And then
Die.
Okay.
It's a bit of a slower death than, you know, I'm really painting the picture up to be at that point. But I'm curious if this Doomsayer goes off, if Faeli ever achieves a winning position almost ever again without picking up a Consecration.
Ooh, wow. And throws out the well played as well, as if immediately validating Admirable's thoughts on the situation. He does not want to be behind at this late stage of the game, and now feels like he is. Lich King could have something to say about this, but this is Twilight Drake into Bone Mare curve coming out from Casie.
It's quite devastating.
The equality clear is available for Faeli, but it's only a Pyromancer equality clear. It's a symmetrical pyro clear, which is the weaker type when you're trying to be the absolute aggressor. You'd love to keep minions on board as you equality clear.
I would definitely think it's too soon to use an equality at this point. You're not generating really tempo with it. But this is a massive punish for Casie, who is about, again, just creating swing turns. So the first one was created, but that's oftentimes not enough. You have to keep going down that chain until you find the turn that seals the deal. You know, Casie still doesn't have a Spellstone. He's only got one Shroom Brewer. And right now, Gul'dan is the major swing turn. So it's about building up that demon pool, and in the meantime, pressuring Faeli enough that he has to answer back. It's about making him use resources as well.
On top of that, if this board were to get removed with equality, he has life tap to 15 double hooked Reaver as an immediate follow-up.
Yeah, but this is the kind of board that often demands an equality. Like, this is enough pressure for Casie to end in 2 turns very easily. And then if you equality from there, every single board development from Casie is going to threaten lethal, and then threaten lethal, and threaten lethal.
Yep.
It honestly, even Warlock's like a weird kind of zoo deck. It's about being aggressive.
There it is.
At the right times.
Quality Pyro Kings.
Oh, this is really smart. I had not spotted this, and this is a brilliant play. That puts a lot of pressure back on Casie.
It does, but now the double hooked Reaver is live. Does not even have to life tap here if he doesn't need to. He used Spellbreaker instead of the second hooked Reaver, which takes a huge amount of power off the board. Double hooked Reaver, I think there was a consideration, considering how likely you are to be playing Blood Reaver Gul'dan in the very near future. Do sacrifice some threats, you know, you're essentially giving away one of your 7/7s into the 5/5 at that point. But you do get paid off very quickly when you bring that extra 4/4 back from Blood Reaver Gul'dan.
Trying to think of what all the punishes are there. I mean, I guess at that point, Spellbreaker is also another big punish that you suffer to. If you only play the one if you only play the one Hooked Reaver. If you play both Hooked Reavers, I think equality is a real fear. But again, you get some amount of refund. There's no taunts in that pool. I'm interested. And now it's test number 2, Lich King.
Reporting for duty.
Got past the early stages fine.
Army.
Yeah, Army's a lot weaker than even Paladin, though. There's so many important spells in the deck. Admittedly, though, Faeli has gone more minion heavy with his. Casey's loading up. He says, have your second Lich King card. I need to stop this first and foremost by challenging, and then second of all by following up.
This game is balancing on a razor's edge right now. If Casie can find enough breathing room to get that Gul'dan down safely from here, then he can potentially just climb out of it. But this Lich King is alive, and Casie has allowed Faeli a position where he can just keep it alive for another turn. And he has such great tools to do that. Spike Ridge Steed is in hand even.
To me, that's a big part of the Spellbreaker use from Casie. Now that both of them are down, that card becomes a way different story.
Oh, yes.
And this is the lack of Spellstone on Casey's end. You know, he's over halfway into the deck and yet to find that card. It's there to handle big things like Lich King.
Oh.
And you see the wince from Casie now.
Yep. The good news, though, is there is enough power on board still to contest the 10-7. Does give Casie a bit of breathing room, just a little bit of freedom.
It's probably the, I mean, to me, this looks like a Gul'dan turn.
Has to be Gul'dan, yeah.
Yeah. But I don't think Casey's necessarily comfortable in this position. He's still got a long ways to go, but that second Hellfire certainly providing a lot.
Oh, no.
Wow.
Second Spike Ridge as well.
But now this is a big decision point for Faeli, though. So the Frostmourne, I think, threatens way more damage in the long term than the Spike Ridge Steed does.
That's true.
because it's a compounding issue, but the Spike Ridge Steed helps keep your minions alive.
I like keeping minions alive. If you keep them alive, they tend to do more damage.
It's a true story. He hasn't seen either Acidic Swamp Boost from Casie, so that also is a fear.
Yeah.
Perhaps you lose too much tempo doing that. But Casie is, it looks fairly safe to me right now.
I think if Faeli plays the Frostmourne here, Casie, the power of Casey's response to that will definitely see him
Oh
safe.
goodness! I mean, his response is just insane.
Yeah.
If it's the Frostmourne this
I
turn.
think this is the right decision from Faeli. Is that Repentance? It is Repentance. Wow. Faeli trying to shut down a turn like just, Suck plus Lich King. It's already playing it.
Yeah.
There was like 4 more attacks to make.
I mean, to be fair, look, to be fair, look,
I love you, Casie.
it's right. Now the 2/4, I'm not necessarily sold on, and especially not in this order.
No. This order must be somewhere close to strictly incorrect. 3-1 Ooze and a 2-4 Taunt. A 2-4 Taunt that does not die to Consecration. As opposed to a 2-1 Taunt that is, and you can start to see the confirmation on Casey's face. To be fair, today alone, we have seen both sides of the spectrum, right? We've seen Casie mess up because of the speed that he played. Well, okay, let's not draw causation where there is just correlation. We have seen a player that plays very fast make mistakes. We have also seen Viper rope out, causing him to miss crucial attacks and sequences. Now, it is not on me to draw a causal relationship between those things. Let's see. Oh my goodness. 5 minions, including a Wind Fury Harpy and a Tyrion, and just like that, Casie is gonna give it up. What a way to book your ticket.
Whoa. It was just so sudden. I was like, I'm pretty sure she's gonna Army the Dead here, make it explosion. It was just so sudden. We're focused on like a little tiny minute detail. Like, you don't play the 2/4 first. That's a Repentance.
I was ranting about some nonsense about correlation and causation, and all of a sudden, Army of the Dead, bang, biggest board you've ever seen.
You dummy. Everyone knows that correlation definitely equals causation.
Yeah.
That's a time-old rule of science.
Did you know consuming ice cream makes you drown? Think about it.
I'm not going to think about that. But what I am going to think about is that Faeli is now LA bound. He's booked the ticket. He's coming to the championship. This is such a big deal for Faeli because we've been hyping him up for so long. And this is now it. He's headed to a championship to show everyone what he's got.
I can't wait. I want to hang out with him. I want to see him play against the world's best in a championship environment. I want to potentially see him make it through all the way to Worlds as well. Of course, my heart goes out to my teammate and friend, Casie, but he still has another opportunity left in the bag.
That's absolutely right. He's moving down to that decider match where he'll await an opponent. But for now, Faeli joins Viper, heading to a championship here in Los Angeles. Viper, it's going to be his second appearance in this this season's cycle alone. But for Faeli, this is a lot of where that hard work has been directed, is making it to that big championship stage. That's really the pinnacle of Hearthstone when it comes to competition, is getting through the playoff bracket, which is already tough enough, and then proving yourself on that championship stage afterwards.
Yeah, when you start to look at the pool of players who have achieved that multiple times, and then the players above those who have achieved championships multiple times, it's a very, very small and very illustrious list. So when you start getting yourself in contention with that group of players, that is a sign that all the hard work that you've put in, I think hard work and Faeli are really perfect companions here, because there is no player that I've seen generally go from a fairly average looking player to a fantastic one just through repetition and practice and putting the hours in and honing your craft.
And we've got Faeli on the line to have a few questions with him here, and now he has booked his ticket to Los Angeles. Faeli, can you hear me?
Hi guys, I can hear you. Yeah.
Congratulations on a big win. It's been a number of years of hard work for you to get to a point like this. How does it feel now Did you feel like all that hard work has paid off for you finally at this point?
Yeah, I'll figure it. Like, this was the playoffs I expected the least of, because the last two ones I prepared so much and my lineups were on point. And this time my lineup was like the best decks, but not like exploiting the other lineups. So I didn't have that high hopes, but I'm super happy that I made it out.
Yeah, well, we're both very happy for you, but I wanted to ask. I go back a long way in terms of meeting up with you, casting you in tournaments, playing against you in tournaments, because you'd come over to the UK for various events as well. What do you think you're doing anything differently now when you're having such an incredible 2018 and now 2019 than you were back then several years ago?
Well, yeah, definitely. This year is totally different for me because I just decided to play Hearthstone full time compared to previously. I was studying a lot.